Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Your Mark on the World show. I'm your host, Devin Thorpe, and I'm a Forbes contributor covering social entrepreneurship and impact investing. And today we've got a great social entrepreneur on the show. We've got with us Conlan O'Leary, who's the co-founder and CEO of Sighten. Conlan, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Devin. Really excited to be here.
Well, we're thrilled to have you. You're at an interesting place in the social entrepreneurship world because I've talked to a lot of people who are involved in the solar world, some in financing, some in installation, but you're the first that I've talked to in this software space. And you've convinced me already in our pre-interview interview that you're really making a big difference. And so I'm excited to hear more about that. But tell us a little bit about the problem you see that Sighten is solving.
Sure. So Sighten is a verticalized software company, serving the solar industry specifically. And the problem we're solving is really, as the solar industry has made tremendous strides, reduced costs, added innovative financing to make it really easy for homeowners to switch to solar energy. The missing piece has really been better leveraging technology to really smooth out the entire process of going solar, from initial marketing to a customer all the way to turning on a system and generating clean energy. And so we really have said, let's be the solar operating system. Let's build very specific software for system design, for contract execution, for project management, and basically allow all solar organizations, whether they're equipment manufacturers, salespeople, installers, to do what they do best and just leverage a technology tool set that really empowers them.
I think that's great. And it's interesting. You gave me some data that really surprised me about the total cost of a solar install in a residential job. Now, most of the cost isn't the solar panels anymore. The solar panels have come down so much now that the other costs are more. And so your software helps to manage really all of the other costs, right?
Yeah, precisely. So our friends in the hardware space have done a ton of work, and the cost of panels, of inverters, of other pieces of equipment have come down dramatically. If you look at that cost curve, it looks a lot like Moore's Law, and how computer chips have come down in price. So that's fundamentally enabling this whole solar revolution. Solar's a cheap source of electricity now. And as that's happened and people have realized, wow, hardware is really at kind of, as low as it can go. What are these other costs that are kind of hanging around? And it's customer acquisition, it's all the coordination costs between organizations, it's project management, it's redoing designs, it's kind of all these inefficiencies that seem small in isolation, but add up to a lot at the end of the day. And so, when you have inefficiencies and coordination problems and you need to standardize, I think software is a great solution there. And for solar, for an idiosyncratic, complex industry like solar, I think you really need purpose-built software as opposed to, a horizontal software solution that you try and repurpose.
Well, it's a unique set of assets when you think about solar panels sitting on someone's house that may be owned by a third party with cash flows going in several different directions. It's a pretty unique asset, isn't it?
Yeah, precisely. It's there can be 10, 12 different parties to a solar transaction. When to the homeowner it seems pretty simple. Someone approached them, said, "Hey, do you want to pay less for power? Are you interested in clean energy?" And they signed a contract. But behind the scenes, you've got equipment folks, you've got distributors, the installer, the salesperson, the financing entity, which then could be a bunch of sub financial entities. So bringing that whole ecosystem together can be very challenging, and I think having a single standard platform for everyone to interact and efficiently do that is really going to reduce costs, and fundamentally reducing costs enables us to offer cheaper solar power to businesses and homeowners and grow the industry.
How much are tax credits playing into the industry now, and how does that impact what you're doing?
So the tax credit has been very important, and it's great that Congress, came together and extended the solar tax credit as well as the wind tax credit for 5 years. I think that kind of is indicative of broad political support for renewable energy, which you see in polling pretty consistently, and a great narrative around jobs and solar and wind really being jobs engines in a way that other industries just aren't right now. So the tax credit was, incredibly important to get the industry off the ground. It continues to be important to make certain new markets competitive. Solar is going in completely unsubsidized, in California and in the Northeast where electricity rates are very high. So I'd say it's been important to the development of the industry. It's important for us to get through this adolescent phase that I'd say we're in right now. But solar's sort of ready imminently to stand on its own 2 feet because it's just getting so cheap and competitive.
Well, it is exciting to see where it's going and what it's doing. And I'm thinking a lot as I think policymakers must be thinking that eventually solar costs will drop to the point that the subsidy is no longer required in order to incentivize people to make the switch, because it will just make sense economically without that incentive. But one of the drivers for that, I think, needs to be seeing these non-hard costs, the non-solar panel costs coming down in tandem, which brings us back to your software and what you're doing. It seems like it's going to play a key role in driving these costs down.
Yes, definitely. And if you look to Europe, for instance, which is a more mature solar market in terms of penetration, and so they've kind of learned, I think, a lot of the lessons that we're learning now. And solar on the residential level can go in at under $2 a watt, whereas in the U.S. we're still about double that. And that's really due to them standardizing things like permitting and paperwork, and just making the process incredibly smooth. And I think we can learn a lot from them, but it really shows the potential because, when solar is below $2 a watt, $1.50 a watt, literally every state in the United States, it's economical to go solar in an unsubsidized manner. So the blueprint's there. We just need to kind of build the tools to make it happen.
Well, I appreciate you sharing all of these insights about Sighten, but I want to shift gears just a little bit and talk about you a little bit, if you don't mind getting personal. As a leader in the industry, you are a role model to many people. Who do you look up to in turn as your role model?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think I really look up to my parents, and I'd say, my father has set a great example in a couple of ways that really portended the career path that I would take. And he's a school psychologist in New York for elementary school children. And the thing that I really admire and always remember growing up was how every dinner conversation was just dominated by this child that he was trying to advocate certain services for, and how it was clearly just incredibly weighing on him what the outcome would be. And I just remember thinking like, wow, like this is not a job. This is his life. This is his passion. Like he goes to bed at night, wakes up in the morning, and is thinking about are we going to get this kid the services he needs, and how do I advocate to do that? And I think that really instilled very early on this sense of needing to have a purpose, and if you have a job, that's cool, it pays the bills, but do something you're passionate about that you kind of can't turn off. And I think that's really influenced me and led me to where I am today.
Now, I get that solar power is important in combating climate change. I get that there are huge risks to mankind as a result of climate change. What's your connection to that? Why do you personally care enough about it that you've devoted your career to it?
Sure. So I completely agree and think that climate change is really the seminal issue of our time. And to me, it's really simple. We have this incredibly unique, incredible planet that, we've been fortunate enough to inherit. And based on, the way society is organized and how we're consuming resources, we're, on track to make it, uninhabitable within a few generations. And that just fundamentally strikes me as incredibly selfish, short-sighted, ignorant. I think we have an obligation to organize our society in a way that is, sustainable and allows, our environment to exist for future generations. And I think, living in Silicon Valley, I think Silicon Valley can catch a lot of flack and has caught in flack for, forming companies that cater to the needs of, wealthy 20, 30 somethings. How do I get my food delivered faster? How do I get from point A to point B faster? And so I think, what I've tried to think about being out here is how can you organize these same resources and capabilities, which are numerous here, and organize them for, social good and addressing this climate change issue. And I think you're seeing kind of a nice crop of entrepreneurs out here that are really plugged in and addressing those issues.
It's interesting to see that. Do you remember the first time you became aware of or worried about these issues, and what caused you to engage or to think about it that first time?
Yeah, I think I was pretty young, and I remember going on a hike in the upstate New York, where I'm originally from Long Island, but was in upstate New York. And I remember the trees looked strange and their leaves were sort of dying or brown. And I remember asking what was happening, and it was due to acid rain. And when that was a pretty big problem on the East Coast when I was growing up. And I remember, kind of pondering that, asking more questions. And that was really that first moment where I internalized, oh, wow, like human, society and our actions, are literally killing, our planet and aspects of our ecosystem. And it kind of was shocking and I was taken aback.
I hear what you're saying. It's an interesting observation, and appreciate you sharing that anecdote. Now, I ask all of our guests for what I call an impact hack, some tip that would help us all do more good. What's yours?
Sure. So I've been thinking about this a lot, and actually the hack that impacts me the most is take time every day to actually think. I think we're so bombarded, in 2016 with social media, with technology, smartphones, everything, that it's really easy to kind of live a reactive life, just kind of, ingesting all this stimulus. And I think it's really important to unplug, put your phone down. I think meditation, can be great in this capacity, but really just think and be. And I think that's so important to ensure that you're on a good path, that you're doing something that you're passionate about. I think that the times in my life where I've kind of gotten off track or doing something that I'm not as passionate about, it's because I've kind of let inertia and habit kind of pick up steam. And so I think every day, whether it's in the morning or the evening, take 5 minutes and just think and just kind of be with yourself. And I think you'll see tremendous outcomes from that.
Well, that's great. I sure appreciate you taking the time to share that tip and to take the time to be with us today. Before you go, will you just tell people how they can connect with you and learn more about Sighten? Yeah,
so the easiest way to learn about Sighten is to go to our website, www.sighten.io, SIGHTEN.io. And you can request a demo. You can look at our job postings. We are hiring. And then for me personally, it's probably best to connect with me over email. So you can just find me at Conlan, CONLAN, @Sighten.io. And, would love to hear from folks. Terrific. Well, Conlan, thank you very much for taking the time to be with us today. We wish you every success in reducing the cost of solar power for the rest of us. Thank you, Devin. I really enjoyed it. All righty. Let's do some good.